Many schools of philosophy find the idea of death an interesting subject because it is feared by many of us due to the fact that it dances hand in hand with the unknown. We like to ask questions like, what comes after death? Does it matter? And how do we come to terms with it? I found a manga that presents its own answer through the lens of a romance story. The manga is called A Brief Moment of Ichika, and it has become one of my favorite stories ever. We'll explore the big themes talked about in the plot and its psychological meaning. To start off with, one of the lessons the story leaves off on is that nothing matters. Looking at that statement simply, it might come across as nihilistic, which in actuality is 100% correct. The male love interest named Yurugi teaches this in his philosophy lectures where Ichika, the main female protagonist, listens in on frequently and never pays much attention to its deeper meaning. On the surface level, this idea is fairly simple. The actions we take now may not be important or be remembered a year from now. The promises we've made in the past may be forgotten half a decade from its birth. After we are gone from this world, the fact that we existed may be gone within a century. For the average person, we will likely not be long for this world. Even for historical figures far into the future, they may just be another footnote at the bottom of a page. From this explanation, the question then arises of why do we even try to do anything? This is something Yurugi asks himself, and it falls into the school of thought of nihilism or the practice of Buddhism when practicing emptiness. This may seem like some sort of bleak joke, but there's more than meets the eye when talking about these concepts. Nihilism is often viewed as the philosophical school of realism. Often when there's an apparent thought that most people view as correct, there's a creeping idea that maybe it isn't what it seems to be. We have to ask the question why or why not, and if we cannot answer that question, then there is no point debating whether something is correct or wrong or good or bad. Obviously, the way society has raised us is that there are morals and laws that we must abide by. Nihilism rips away that curtain and exposes the very basis that these messages lie upon. If we cannot answer these logical questions through rationale, then there is a fallacy, therefore prompting a nihilistic believer to disregard the thought altogether. Then, the only thing that is left is nothing. This can be quite depressing and gets often compared to pessimism, but these other beliefs always have some sort of upside when compared to their downsides. Remove all of these biases and you are left with the bare bones of nihilism. A Brief Moment of Ichika has undertones of this message within its story, but it preaches a positive message in all of this. The professor Yurugi argues that we should live life the way we want to because nothing we do in the end matters. If eating that slice of cake won't affect anything in the end, then it shouldn't matter that this one time you decide to indulge yourself and have it. Obviously, this is a mundane example, but it applies to nearly everything. This is also why Yurugi admires and loves Ichika, because she is very straightforward, and despite everything else going on in her life, she wants to pursue her romance with Yurugi because it is the one thing that brings her joy in her life of emptiness. Buddhism often teaches the idea that there is no concept as oneself. From what I've understood, one of the teachings is to remove yourself from the idea that one result will do you any good or that an activity will prove fatal to your well-being. Not to eradicate, but to suppress the sense of self in order to see everything for what it is constitutes Buddhism. It is once you do this that you have reached self-actualization or ascendance from the shackles of reality. Monks train for years and years to implement this in their lives, so it is no surprise that many of the general folk do not take this message to heart in their daily lives. As an outsider though, we can take the general idea and apply it to our lives in the small moments. From this, we shouldn't care about what others think and go for what we want, which is exactly how our main character, Ichika, goes about her own story. Suffering from a terminal illness that can strike her down at any moment, Ichika lives for what she wants. She chases after Yurugi and professes her love for him. She gets him to want to spend time with her. It turns from a one-sided love into a mutual understanding of one another. As said before, this is because of Ichika's blunt nature and her drive to get what she desires. She embodies the nature of these philosophies discussed despite not understanding much about the concept. The second idea that I want to talk about is a phrase that is brought up within the series that builds on the idea of nihilism and everything we discussed. A phrase that starts off as, if life is just one long goodbye, and this encapsulates the idea of terminal illness in this story. Both protagonists living on borrowed time are learning to love one another, but if they have to say farewell to that all too soon, then what is the point of even starting it in the first place? A Brief Moment of Ichika is riddled with complicated dynamics such as this one. Between Ichika and her brother, there's a tension of the brother wanting Ichika to be like she was in the past, because as she is now, there's always something eating away at her, not allowing for her true unburdened side to show through. The process of pre-grief loss is turbulent because depending on who you are, it'll be different. Her brother is dealing with a spectrum of intense emotions, as well as trying to hold on while letting go. This leads to and also feeds into altered family dynamics. While trying to bring back how Ichika used to be, her brother needs to maintain his composure while trying to come to terms with the death of his sister. It shows the effect of terminal illness on family family members close to the affected. Her mother takes on a calmer demeanor, thinking only of how to make Ichika not regret the life that she will be living until her timely departure. She comforts her, gives her advice, and at the end of it all, she never forgets her daughter and the influence that she has had on her. She will learn from her firstborn and give the brother a life worth living. Combine these dynamics with the even more complicated dynamic with Yorugi, and Ichika has been swamped with these relationships, as well as the same pre-grief process that everyone else around her has been going through. For anyone, this is a hard time to be going through, but because of these tough moments, maturity is something these characters have to face sooner rather than later. The brother matures by realizing that Ichika has dreams and desires of her own, whether it was graduating from high school in the past or chasing her relationship with Yorugi. Ichika matures by realizing she needs to make the most of her time left here on Earth. It is towards the tail end of the story, but after Yorugi leaves the picture, Ichika is left with nothing but the things he taught her during their time together. As discussed before, nihilism and Buddhism were themes of the story and lessons in Ichika's life that she never fully grasped and that she still doesn't fully understand. While this may seem like a problem, it is not Ichika's duty to completely comprehend what the meaning of these philosophies are. Instead, she only needs to learn the practical application of these lessons to her own life. Ichika embodies the idea that we should spread a little happiness, no matter to whom or to where, everywhere we go. Towards the end of her life, this is the way she wants her loved ones to spend it. She doesn't want them to be stuck up on the past and the fact that she will pass, but in the prospect of living tomorrow to be a better person and improve someone else's day all that much more. She learns this from example, as after Yorugi leaves, she needs to learn to move past the time they had together and find a new happiness, which is in her friends and family that are still with her. She becomes the role model that her brother needs, teaching him valuable lessons of being the better person and never having regrets. Rather, as described, she'd rather her brother bring a spark of joy to the lives of his friends and to their mother. This manga has many more examples and scenarios bolstering these lessons we have discussed, so if you have the chance, read it. It's valuable getting to know how this realistically affects us and is going to affect us when we get to the point of our lives where the people we look up to are no longer with us. Nothing is for certain, and that applies to the lives of ourselves and our loved ones. A Brief Moment of Ichika is a heart-wrenching story because of its blunt characterization and intense storytelling. It doesn't have any tact regarding how it conveys the story, but I think that's something we're missing out on a lot in life. When our days are filled with wild goose chases and that have people and answers that often dance around the bullseye, narratives are the arrow we need to pierce through the unknown to provide us not with the correct answer, but an interpretation that we can take and build on ourselves. I think from these lessons, whether through stories or our own experiences, we shouldn't take the goodbye as it is, but be the best version of ourselves we can as this farewell reaches its climax.